A while back, we did a podcast on a new translation of the New Testament called the First Nations Version. It's a translation for Indigenous people who, in their heyday, spoke hundreds of languages. Now, most of them in North America speak English as their first language. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Stone Chapel Podcast. I'm David Capes. Terry Wildman has been at the helm of the First Nations Version project, working with InterVarsity Press to do something that is truly unique. I find the translation beautiful and refreshing. It's a dynamic equivalence translation that has in mind the values and the traditions of Indigenous people as they're doing the translation. Now, the Stone Chapel Podcast is part of the Church Leaders Podcast Network. We are dedicated to providing resources for church leaders as they are winding their way through mountains of cultural change these days. For more information, go to ChurchLeaders.com/podcast network. I met Darlene and Terry Wildman a few years ago. They are theologians in their own right, teachers, leaders, and fine musicians. In fact, you will hear Darlene playing the native flute. So today, a truly gifted leader who is translating the Bible for his people, Terry Wildman, on the Stone Chapel Podcast.
Bujuniji b'marazig, gitya nimiki manomash kiki manidu, indigo, Terry Wildman and Dishnakaz. So what I said was, hello, my friends who share this life together with me. My Ojibwe name is Gitya Nimiki Manomash Kiki Manidu, which translates to voice of great thunder with a good medicine spirit. But I'm also known as Terry Wildman, a little easier to live up to. Hey, it's good to be here today on this podcast. I just want to say Buju is hello to everyone out there.
Terry Wildman. Terry, good to see you. Welcome back to the Stone Chapel Podcast.
It's good to be here.
And it's great to see you again. You're looking well. And I have in my hand a very fine-looking edition, First Nations version of Psalms and Proverbs. The kind of the subtitle is An Indigenous Bible Translation. Now, you're from the Ojibwe tribe originally.
Yeah, that's my ancestry. It's actually both Ojibwe and Yaqui. Ojibwe from the Great Lakes region up into Canada, and the Yaqui is from Sonora, Mexico, up into Arizona.
Okay.
So I have a little bit of both, but what you heard was the Ojibwe language as I was introducing myself. Yeah. Since I was born and raised in Michigan, I connect a little more on that side of my heritage.
Very, very good. Well, you have been involved now for quite some time in doing Bible translations for Indigenous people. And one of the things that happened, Terry, as you well know, that when the Europeans arrived, they began to missionize the local peoples. And part of that missionization was to learn their language and then to try to give them a Bible. And I think the Algonquin language may be one of the first ones. Am I right about that?
I think you're right. I think the first Bible translation made it on Turtle Island here in North America was in the Algonquin language.
Yeah. And the challenge is they took European, maybe even British kind of ideas and put those into the Algonquin language. And it never really connected, did it? I mean, not the same way that this translation that you're working on now is connected.
Right. Well, the goal of most of the settlers that were coming here was to get the Native Americans assimilated into the dominant culture now that the colonial people had come. And so the idea would be in the boarding schools, they didn't teach our language. So even though we had Bible translations, we weren't taught how to read those Bibles. But even though they had Bible translations, they didn't consider much of the native culture of any value. And so they wanted to input European style values, which was already found in the westernized versions of our translations. So that's kind of the idea. There was the old saying is kill the Indian, but save the man. and so they wanted to kill everything Indian in us. And so our language was part of that. Even though I'm glad they translated into our language, it's better to have some in our language than nothing. But again, the cultural side didn't come through well. And for Native people, I believe, and our translation is working on that idea, is that even though it's English, it's a cultural translation that helps our Native people connect more using Native metaphors, more of a Native worldview, but staying true to the meaning of the Scripture within a Native American and an Indigenous North American context.
Well, in a sense, that project was successful because there's not many Indigenous people, First Nations people who still can read their language and understand their language. They almost all do English now, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's right. Sadly, our tribes are working on revitalizing our languages, but pretty much they've been lost. And, for example, among the Hopi, I could find very few Hopis who could actually read the Hopi Bible in Hopi. Sometimes, if they could put the English Bible next to it, they could get it to work and understand that. And that's true across the board for most of our people. Easily less than 10% could read their own languages.
Yeah.
It's changing, but some of the depth of the language is being lost because we have very few elders that still speak, and they're working to capture all that.
Yeah. Capturing that is going to take time and
Yes.
probably a lot of resources as well. Now, when did the First Nations version of the New Testament come out? It's been a couple of years, hasn't it?
Yeah, it was August of 2021.
2021. Okay. So it's been a few years now, and that has done well and beautifully, and I hope it's capturing a lot of imaginations. I love the translation. I really appreciate it. It's a dynamic equivalent translation that's published by InterVarsity Press. But now you have produced the Psalms and Proverbs, which are the kind of the heart of the wisdom tradition.
Well, Psalms and Proverbs was just released August 5th from InterVarsity Press, and we had a celebration about that. But yes, now the Hebrew Old Testament, that's how we began it, was with Psalms and Proverbs. At the time, we weren't sure if we'd continue, but we are going to. We've made the decision to do the whole Old Testament, and InterVarsity Press is happy with that, and we've signed the contract, and I've got a lot of work to do for the next 8 or 9 years.
I started to say that's about a decade's worth of your life for work. But think about how significant that is going to be for millions of people, quite frankly, will benefit from that work that you're doing. But you're not working on this alone. You've got a team, right?
We have an Indigenous Translation Council. We have many Indigenous reviewers. We have men, women, young elders, and young people involved in it. We have a council of about 9 Native people that go over everything. I do the initial translation work, and then we have our reviewers and our council give suggestions. We work in Google Docs, and then I respond to those suggestions. And then after we're done, we turn it over to some Hebrew consultants who kind of go through it and check it out, make sure we're not running off the rails or something like that, keeping us good. And we loved having some of those experts. Not all of them are Native, but some of them are. And again, someone would say, well, why would you have a non-Native working on it with you? I said, well, that's part of reconciliation.
Mm-hmm.
The Native people were in charge. We're joining with non-Native experts that help us in this process, but we take the lead on it, and that's important for our Native people to understand. We're leading this translation.
Yeah, and that's key. It's a beautiful translation. We're going to read from it here in just a minute, and along the way, we're going to hear a little bit of your wife playing the native flute. And I think maybe you'll be on the guitar helping support some of that. You never know. But she's a delightful woman. She was here at the Lanier Theological Library a couple of years back and stood there in the stairwell of our great hall, right outside our great hall, and played the flute. And it just filled that space with beauty and goodness. It was just a good day when you guys came by. All right, so the First Nations version, one of the things I want to talk about is I love the way that you guys render names. Let's talk a little bit about that process, because I have a friend who has a new ministry, and his ministry is called Asaph's Table. It's a ministry that links together people who are worship leaders. Asaph was a very important worship leader at the time of King David. And I told him about your project, and I told him what the meaning of the name Asaph. He didn't know what the meaning of the name was. And so here I am at Psalm 50, and there's a superscription at Psalm 50, a sacred song of gathers the people, Asaph.
Mm-hmm.
So his name, Asaph, means gathers the people. I love the way that you render all these names.
Yeah.
What was the decision on that?
Well, from the beginning, even before I partnered with the translation organization, One Book of Canada, and when I was working by myself before I had a council, I knew that our Indigenous people, our names traditionally had meaning. And that meaning is important. It helps us define who we are. We're given those names by our relatives and our grandparents and sometimes clan members. And I knew as a student of the Bible that in the Hebrew and in the Greek, names also have meaning. Of course, some names are hard to find the meaning. Some of them have been lost. The meaning has been lost, but for the most part, it's still there. And so we dig deep into the Hebrew. For the Old Testament, I think I heard that there's 2,700 names in the Old Testament of people and places.
Wow.
So it's going to be a challenge to come up
Yeah.
with the meaning of each name and then give it a native feel to that meaning.
Yeah.
And that's what we work on doing. And when I finally had a translation council, everyone agreed that this is the way we want to do it because it's been meaningful. And we've had Native people who weren't even believers. I was surprised as they read the genealogy of Jesus begin to weep because they didn't realize that Jesus loved his ancestors just like they do.
Yeah.
And that for him, ancestors were important.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so that's our Native
Like you
Indigenous
said, that's your
way.
identity. That's who you are. Your family defines you in a sense.
Yeah.
So here, and I love the way a sacred song of gathers the people. And you also put in parentheses right after that, just so we don't miss it, the name itself, which is in Hebrew, Asaph or Asaph, that kind of thing. Now you do that throughout. You do it with the names of God. You do it with the names of places. But I very much appreciate how you maintain that native sense. I think it just elevates the translation in a beautiful way. Let's read together from Proverbs 8. That's where I think you wanted to camp out a little bit today, Terry.
Yeah. We can read through it first and then maybe comment on it.
Yeah, let's do that. We're in the First Nations version in the book of Proverbs, chapter 8, which is entitled, the book of Proverbs is Wise Sayings, which is perfect. Perfect.
So we're going to start with verse 22, and I'll explain that afterwards. But the heading for that is Grandmother Wisdom as Creator's Partner. Grandfather brought me forth at the beginning of his work of creation, long before he made all things. From before all days, he set me in the place of honor during the first days of Mother Earth. I was born before the oceans were filled, before the springs of water burst from the ground. My birth took place before the mountains were set in place and before the hills were formed. I was there before Creator made the prairies and the plains, even before the first clumps of clay were formed. I was with him when he set the world above in place. I was his companion when he carved a circle on the face of the ancient deep waters. Yes, I, Grandmother Wisdom, was there when he placed the clouds in the sky and made the underground rivers flow. I was with him when he told the oceans how far they could go, so they would go no further than what he said. I was there as he set in place the strong turtle that holds up the land. I was the wise builder at his side, making his heart glad each day, dancing with joy before him. I danced for joy in this world he was creating, as I delighted in the human beings he placed there.
Oh, that's one of my favorite passages from the book of Proverbs. Beautifully done, beautifully done. Let's spend a little time taking apart and you do some explanation for us. First of all, you start talking about grandfather. Who are you referring to there?
Well, grandfather is the way we present the Hebrew name of God, Yahweh. English translations use Lord, but we didn't feel that was appropriate for our native people because the term Lord has some cultural baggage attached to it from the colonial takeover. We looked for a name that was not only honorable, highly respected. A grandfather in our native culture is the highest place in the family, the elder of the elders, the elders of the land. And so to present God as grandfather is several of our tribes that I've researched. My own tribe, the Anishinaabe people, call God Mishomis, grandfather. That's one of the ways we refer to God. And just like the Hebrew language refers to God in many different titles and names, Most High and El Shaddai and all these different terms that refer to the same one, the same being, but refer to different aspects of that great one, of the divine.
You know, when they were doing these English translations, the 1300s, and beginning to look into that, Tyndale's translation, they looked at the name Yahweh, God's name, and they began looking for something in English that would represent that, because you can't really represent that. Now, Jehovah came along as a way of describing that, but it was a world of lords and ladies. It was a world of noblemen and powerful people, people with authority. It was a world of kings and queens. And so they reached for those words that were customary and contextually important for the English-speaking people in that part of Europe at the time. And those were the words that they brought down that come into our translations today. And so, it comes lords, ladies. And I've seen some translations that will say not grandmother wisdom, but lady wisdom, as if lords and ladies, right? You also have the word creator there.
Yes. So whenever you see grandfather in the First Nation version, you'll know that Yahweh, YHWH, is behind that name. But when it comes to the other titles for God or names for God in the Hebrew El Elyon, Elohim, these different terms, we use creator, we use great spirit. We felt a freedom to use different titles or names that Native people have called our creator in place of Elohim and these different aspects of it. Probably you'll see great spirit and creator. And again, the Bible uses creator to refer to God. God
Absolutely.
is considered to be an honored great spirit in the Bible also. He's the God above all gods. He's the
Right.
spirit above all spirits
Yeah.
idea.
And in the beginning, the Spirit hovered over the waters, right? We read
Hmm.
that. Now, you also have the character here in this particular part of the text as grandmother wisdom.
Yeah. One of the things in the Hebrew, to me, as this part of Proverbs is spectacular. And it's an important part because I think about Solomon is the writer of these wisdom sayings here, these wise sayings. And think about who raised Solomon.
Mm. Mm.
Okay. David and Bathsheba.
Right, right.
We don't often think much of Bathsheba. We don't think what happened to her. She got married. She
Yeah,
became the mother of Solomon. So,
right.
where did Solomon get such respect that he would personify wisdom as like a mother,
Yes,
a
exactly.
woman.
Yes.
And because Solomon also in many places says, listen to your father's teachings, don't abandon your mother's teachings. So
Mhm.
he must have got a little bit from both of his
Both
parents,
sides, exactly.
both sides.
Yeah.
And she must have been a good wisdom keeper
Mm.
to bring that out. But for our native people, the idea that the Creator is manifest, so to speak, both in masculine terms and feminine terms.
Mm.
And so this is the case in Proverbs. Now, most translations don't continue to bring out the feminine aspect of wisdom.
That's true. Yeah.
Yes, it's always feminine
Mm.
in the Hebrew.
Right.
Yeah,
Chokmah is always feminine. And in the Greek, when it's translated in Greek, Sophia
yes,
is always feminine as well.
always feminine. And so I love this idea that we have a grandfather and a grandmother
Mm.
being represented here. And grandmother and grandfather are working together to bring creation into being, to create the universe and everything there is. He brought her forth first. Now, what's really interesting is theologically, this creates some tensions
Mm.
because we go to John 1:1, in the beginning is the Word. All things were created through the Word, the Logos of God,
Mm.
which has more of a masculine idea behind
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Jesus, of course, was masculine. But many scholars, and I can't speak for all of them, will make a connection between the Logos and between the wisdom mentioned here,
Oh,
talked about here.
absolutely. Yeah. I think most New Testament scholars, at least,
Yeah,
do draw a very, very close line between the idea of wisdom and the idea of logos there, and the
yeah,
identification of Jesus with the wisdom of God and identification
yes.
of Jesus with the logos of God as well. This is an exciting project. I am so pleased that you guys have brought this about. And now you're starting the next decade, which is going to be filling your mind with even more scripture.
Yeah, I'm ahead of my counsel working on Genesis.
Mm.
And what an amazing book this is. Such stories, stories of good things, stories of bad things.
Right.
We got some good people and some real evil people. We got some rascals
Yes.
involved in
Yeah.
there. I think as we look at this story and retell this story, bringing out the indigenous aspects to the surface a little more.
Mm.
That's what we're doing with Proverbs, what you see here. We're bringing to the surface things that are in the Hebrew, but aren't always brought forth in the westernized translations.
That's right.
But we're bringing these things out up to the surface so people can see it's there, it's in the Hebrew, and the Hebrew scholars know about it. But we're kind of excited that the indigenous way of bringing this out just brings such more beauty and color and depth
Hmm.
to the translation. That's our hope.
Terry, in part, I think it's because the people of the book were people who were close to the land.
Hmm.
And the land was very important. The earth was very important. And that's true from what I understand of Native people as well.
Yes.
And so I think there's something that you can teach us about the beauty, about the importance, about the significance of this great earth that we are on, that God created, that we are here to take care of and attend and to love and to draw from, to draw life from it, because all the food that we eat, the air that we breathe, the water, we are sustained by it. So there's so much that you guys can teach us, and this is just the next installment. It's the First
Yeah.
Nations version of Psalms and Proverbs, an Indigenous Bible translation. Terry Wildman, thanks for being with us today on the Stone Chapel podcast.
Miigwech, Bazindaoyeg. Thank you for listening.
The First Nations version is a remarkable project. Even if you don't have First Nations people in your congregation, I think you will find the First Nations version of the Psalms and Proverbs to be a fresh way of hearing and encountering the Scriptures. Thanks to our team at the Lanier Theological Library for their assistance in publishing this podcast. That would be our audio editor, Kathy Capes, our social media guru, Rebecca Fleming, and our producers at the Church Leaders Podcast Network. That's Jana Firestone and Jessica Mauser. The native flute today was played by Darlene Wildman. Phil Keggy provided our intro and outro music. Now, don't let another podcast go by without giving us a 5-star rating and laying down a comment or two. That will help other people find us along the way. If you know of others interested in the current work on theology that we're doing and in culture, please share this podcast with them. Until next time, I'm David Capes. Thanks for listening.